What is up, guys? Phaedo82 coming at you with a follow-up video to the last Rust Tactics video that I did. Let's go ahead and revisit a brief clip from that video to make sure you guys are up to speed. 9 is an absolute beast, and don't underestimate that weapon, especially with the laser sight. As always, guys, Phaedo82, peace. What you guys just took a look at was a defender from a base here who took out a group of raiders from the CML clan. There was a group of about 12 raiders down here with pickaxes chipping away at a stone wall when a defender came around with a SAW M249 light machine gun and he blasted all those raiders. It changed the tides of the raid, it turned things around a bit, and this base was revisited by CML, and it now looks like this. You can see that the core of the base has been completely taken out. Phaedo showed up a little bit late to the raid, but better late than never. We caught some awesome footage nonetheless. What went on here is that CML, during some point, came out to this location. I believe that this tower was built by them from the ground up. It's certainly possible with CML. They have lots of resources, lots of slaves, and they, if one group could do it, could definitely put together a tower like that. They probably came under the cover of night and constructed this absolutely massive battlement here. As you can see, this is the base that we just looked at in the previous footage, and that base has been hollowed out. You can see the sky to the ground. That base, there's nothing in terms of the core of that base. So rockets and C4, this place was lit the fuck up, and that base is absolutely gone. You can see some more rockets being fired in there. These are the incendiary rockets, which are being fired in there to suppress the defenders of that base. The defenders are holed up in a corner of that base where they still have access to some supplies, and they are fighting tooth and nail. They are not giving up. Just like in the first footage of Rust Tactics, this group is not a bunch of, I guess you could say weaklings, if you will, in Rust. They're not sitting there despawning their loot. They are fighting tooth and nail with every last weapon that they have. This is the courtyard of that base that we looked at previously, and again, it's completely barren. You can see that it was hollowed out, and the fires are still burning in here from the incendiary rockets, so they have to work around those. The guys in the red shirts here who just showed up to the party, this is Pharaoh, Murdoch, and their crew. Just like in the previous video, they showed up, and I'm not sure who they have an allegiance to. It appears as though they're helping out Goblin and his crew. I think that they're out here for themselves. Pharaoh and his group seem to be pretty much opportunists, and they come to the fights, but it's never clear really whose side they're fighting on. But it's definitely clear here that they're fighting against CML. I think they're giving Goblin and his guys a break, seeing the damage that's been done to their base. But guys, just take a look at the scope of that tower that was built. This is not only a staging or a raid base, but a battle station. This looks like something that is out of a epic siege on a castle or some type of fortification, and that's exactly what this is. Make no mistake, this has places to shoot from. It has many supplies in there, respawn points, which are going to be the beds and the sleeping bags. If you guys aren't familiar with the mechanics in Rust, beds and sleeping bags allow you to respawn at those locations. And looking at this tower here, you can see that the bottom is sheet metal and then it's stone from there up. So they want the bottom to be the most secure and hardest to get through. As the tower goes up in scale, you'll notice it has many places here which the defenders, or the raiders rather, can get on top of that tower and suppress the base they're being raided. A tower like this, when it goes up, is a way to suppress the enemy. It's also a good way to defend, but you can really neutralize lots of threats when you're high up in the sky like this. But notice that CML has this tower manned to the brim here. This is not a tower where you're noticing one or two snipers like we usually see in a raid. This is many individuals up here who are taking up positions on that tower. And that's not even half of it. Down at the bottom here, it looks like a refugee camp or some people being smuggled across a border. It is packed in here with people in various states of dress. Some people have weapons, other people look like they might be slaves or builders. But CML brought lots of people to the fight here. They have some allies as well. I'm seeing some people without the clan tag. But it's absolutely massive here in terms of the scope of people. Comparing the two teams here, the Raiders definitely have the numbers. They have about 24 people stationed in that tower, whereas the defenders are holed up in the ruins of their previous base, and they have about a half dozen people with some support from Pharaoh and his crew.
We were like using our rockets on them. We were gonna fucking blow it open, but they like just zerged us right as we were doing it, and we couldn't fucking finish. Guys, should we like go over to their base and help them, or should we stay here?
gonna
quick
stay
and
here
then
for
I guess
30
go.
seconds. Wait for this. I'm gonna take a launcher with 1 rocket in it, at least.
As we saw in the last episode of Rust Tactics, Goblin, Pon, and his crew, they have a lot of fight in them, and this, guys, is not just a Zerg raid cam. That's not the purpose of what we want to show off here. We want to show the fight that players have. They are fighting tooth and nail with every last resource they have against the oppression of this large tower that's sprouted out of the landscape, consisting of multiple dozens of raiders that destroyed that base. I mean, I didn't catch it, and I'm sorry that I didn't catch it, but we can surmise that what happened at that base was absolutely chaotic. I don't think CML was there with pickaxes picking through it. I think that they learned from that previous episode here with the M249, and it looks like they blew the shit out of that base relatively quickly, posted up in that oppressive raid tower, and you can see now that that raid tower is being blown into here by Goblin and his crew. They're coming in here and they are shredding through those nakeds that were on the first floor. It looks like the majority of the people moved up higher in the tower to mitigate the damage being done by those now raiders who are raiding that raid tower. And this is a chaotic scene in here, guys. Lots of fighting going on in here. This is really some action-packed footage. Again, keep in mind this is vanilla Rust footage. There's no teleportation. Nothing is spawned in. All of this comes by players. They come by honestly and naturally, and it makes it all the more intense and rewarding. And it's just an adrenaline-packed experience for the players and to watch as well. Again, it's getting lit the hell up in here. These beds, as the players are respawning in here, they are getting shredded. And inside here, the defenders have now taken over at least the first couple layers of the raid tower here. This is going to be a critical point for them to be able to ever have a chance of living in this plot of land again. They need to neutralize this tower. They can't have a tower like this, again, oppressing them every day when they're out trying to farm or do whatever they're doing at their base. So this tower needs to go or be taken over by the defenders. The fight in here is strong, though. The raiders still had a lot of resources in here, so they're able to respawn, grab guns, also loot corpses on the ground that are fleeing here. And the raiders are now going up, and they're taking out the defenders, and they're taking control back over that tower. So the raid tower is now back under CML and their allies' control here, whereas some defenders are still up top trying to hold them at bay. But the tower has once again regained control by CML and their allies. The fighting inside this tower is non-stop. Members are swinging melee weapons, tools, using whatever weapons they have at their disposal to immediately get in the fight, and people are falling as quickly as they're getting up, and this is quickly becoming a tomb. Bodies are piling up on top of one another at a very fast rate, which does tend to lag things down a bit, so keep that in mind when you're watching the footage. But this is a very condensed grouping of players on the server. Now, at this time on the server, there was upwards of 200 players on the server, so it was quite populated, but a large portion of players were focused just in this one area, and a lot of action is going on here. As you can see, this base is a non-stop sort of flashpoint. Members are going down, and they're coming back up as quickly as they can. At the top of the tower here, the defenders of the tower, who are the raiders, still have control of the top of that tower, but the bottom part is still where the previous base owners are coming in and trying to take control of the tower. So this is really where they have to control it. Morgan Freeman has a SAW M249, but he was just capped in the head, so he lost the ability to cover that point of entry. They threw up a high exterior wooden wall to block that up while they can go ahead and repair the base, but the defenders of the base didn't take that for granted, and they decided to blow another hole into the base here, making another way to get into the base and bring the fight back to the raiders. This is one of the most action-packed glimpses of action that I've seen in Rust, in vanilla Rust. The bodies are just starting to pile up here, guys. You're going to be amazed towards the end of this footage how many bodies are around this tower. This probably rivals World War Rustopia in terms of the body count. This might be more, actually. It would be hard to really imagine that because World War Rustopia had a mass amount of carnage, but as you'll see here towards the end of this footage, the amount of corpses here are going to be on par with that, if not exceeding it. But looking here, guys, again, this is a critical point, and the Raiders here are going to have to patch up this base, this tower, if they want to have a foothold in this area. They were able to do that. They're using the middle and the top of the tower to really suppress the defenders from coming in here, and they're able to patch up the base here. They're turning it to metal, and that is going to be something that is going to really hold the defenders back because they can't get through there as easily. But notice that as the twig goes down here, it's a back and forth effort here. The twig's being taken out just as quickly as it's put down. So this is really a cat and mouse game at this point in time, and it's chaotic, guys. It's really fun to watch this footage, and it was probably crazy to be part of it. If anyone has first-person footage from this raid, please upload it and share it in the comment section so other people can see that as well, and I'll try to show it off as much as I can. It was a chaotic scene, and it was unparalleled in terms of, again, what I've witnessed on Rustopia. The bodies are really starting to pile up now, guys. I think you can see why I called this video the Tomb. It is becoming savagery here. It's melee fighting. You can tell the weaponry is being used less because the automatic weaponry, because the ammo is probably running out here. But the fight is just not stopping. Again, this is the essence of this raid camp. It's just this non-stop intense fight. Never stop, never give up. Both sides are fighting as hard as they can here. Again, I'm so impressed by the ability of the defenders of that base, Goblin and his crew, with, of course, the support of Phaedo and their small crew as well. But the amount of fight they're giving to this large raid team is spectacular, guys. We always like rooting for the underdog. It's always fun in Rust to see that. There's been a lot of raid cam footage that I've recorded and deleted because it's been a Zerg raid. People say, oh, wasn't that cool? We used all these rockets to blow this base up and there were only 4 guys in the base. And I actually choose not to upload it because I don't like Zerg raids. Now, I don't consider this necessarily a Zerg raid because CML, they have a lot of numbers here, but the fight is, I wouldn't say evenly matched, but it's an intense fight. And I don't feel as though the defenders are at a disadvantage at this point in time. Surely they were when their base was getting raided, though, because it's a shell of a base, and CML absolutely ripped out of that base everything. Or perhaps it was destroyed. I don't know. Some details need to be filled in on this one. I couldn't catch it from the first second it began, but I think that this footage is still very telling, and we can be sort of forensic Rust scientists, if you will, and sort of deconstruct the raid. But it's safe to say that definitely it happened quick, it happened fast, and it's continuing to just be a non-stop flashpoint on the server. Notice here that this section of the base was taken out so that the defenders who are trying to gain a foothold here are gaining access to that tool cabinet. What this is going to allow them to do is to gain some building privilege. Now, I'm not sure if that's the primary tool cabinet inside that base or if it's one of many, but by gaining access to that tool cabinet, they're going to be able to potentially build up to higher parts of the base, which means they won't have to expend resources like C4 rockets to breach the base or spend a lot of time with hand tools trying to chop it down. Again, guys, just take a look at the bodies piling up on the ground. The Raiders are still doing a good job of utilizing this tower. That first floor building cabinet was patched up in there, but it looks like it was actually patched up by Tim Nagat from Dirt McGirt's crew. Now, I'm not sure whose side he's on because I saw some footage previously where he was in there with CML, and then I saw some footage of CML killing him, so I'm a little bit unclear on that, but he did gain access to that building cabinet and then patch up that hole. So Phaedo and his crew, again, they're in their red shirts down here. They're going through the corpses. Always in raids like this, guys, if you're a scavenger, a solo player in Rust, run down to the raids while all the chaos is going on. You could probably ferry back a lot of supplies to your base, and they could be very valuable things like C4 rockets and lots of resources. Notice here that it looks like Tim Nagat threw down a high exterior stone wall there, so he is on the side of the defenders here helping out. And by doing that, he was able to block the sole entrance to that tower. The biggest flaw in this raid tower, this tower of oppression here that was set up, was that it had one way in and one way out. It was airlocked, so that is always vitally important, but it only had one door, so they were able to close it up with a high exterior stone wall. With the building privilege that TM and the guys got here, they were able to build up to the side of the base, open up those shutters, and go right in here, and again take the fight back into the tomb, back into that tower. So again, we can hear lots of screams, lots of gunfighting, and that is a lot of action to see in Rust in one condensed place and time. And the tower was finally overtaken by the defenders. Goblin reigns supreme over here, looking over the remnants of his previous base, the ruins of his previous base, and surveying the damage, thinking about his next move. This, for me, guys, was very rewarding footage. Again, I'm sorry I didn't catch the raid in its entirety, but I think we picked up on the essence of it here, and again, we can deconstruct a lot of things and talk about it. But what I thought was so interesting about this raid cam footage and so valuable was the fight that the players had. It reminds me of a quote from Winston Churchill, which says, "We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender." And that certainly rang true in this case. Even towards the end of this footage, Goblin and his men were going back out into the fray for more action. As always, guys, hope you enjoyed. Phaedo 82, peace.